Welcome back. Today we're going to talk about Mode 2 movement. In Mode 2 movement, the ship's heading, or the direction where its nose is facing, is different from its vector, which is the direction it travels. So you see our ship here, the Mode 2 ship, it's facing direction A, but is flying in direction AB because that's where its vector is pointing. And so over the course of plotting Mode 2 movement, we're trying to shape the direction that the vector will be going for the next turn. Now over here on the right-hand side, we have our plotting avid. Unfortunately, there's a namespace collision in the game because the word avid is used quite a bit. So this is our plotting avid, is the avid on the plot page. Not to be confused with the battle avid, which is the avid here on the avid page. The battle avid's used for things like launching fighters and other miscellaneous functions. So over here on the plotting page, we have our plotting avid. And then we hit this button over here, we go to the vertical and horizontal plotting grids. You'll see more of those as we actually start thrusting. But in order to show everything at once, we're going to expand this out. So by grabbing right here in the middle, we'll expand this out so we get a nice good size. We should be able to see everything now and still see our ship. So one of the big key features when you're plotting is always go from left to right. So first do your pivots and rolls, then you do your thrust, then your vertical plotting, and then your horizontal plotting. Because everything kind of cascades downhill. So after we do our pivot, so we'll be pivoting around to direction DE, we apply our thrust. Now, some of you might be asking, why did I pivot a good 7 windows when it's faster to do it this way with 5 windows? Well, that's because in Mode 2 movement, the direction that your thrust is applied is at the halfway point of the pivot. As you can see here, as we applied thrust, this window lit up with a red border, as well as a light blue overlay. As we start circling back, you can see that window changes because it's the halfway point of the pivot rounding down, like so. And if we go below the plane, like so, you can see our thrust to be right here in this window. It has a green tint over it, or green overlay, because it's down. And also the border has a dashed line around it in red because red is the color of thrust. As we move over to the vertical plotting grid, you can see we can apply our thrust. We have a little bit of wiggle room. This tells you the vertical and horizontal component. And again, this is not moving the ship. This is just applying thrust in that direction. And then finally, on the horizontal plotting grid, we can see the direction we're applying our thrust. Now, a key thing to note is the flight path of the ship is up here because it's flying off this way. Its thrust is down here because that's the halfway point of the pivot. If I reset this, and let's get our pivot back down to 0. So this is our flight path right now, but as we're applying our thrust, we can see the flight path change slightly because we're getting displacement. If you do not pivot while thrusting in Mode 2 movement, you get half of your thrust this turn as displacement, and you can see both over here on the map and on the plotting grid how that will change where your ship will be flying this turn. As I just cycle through the different options. And again, you can also go up slightly or down slightly. Yeah, right now it's not going to do any downward displacement because it's too small of a amount. So yeah, so again, as we pivot, you can see, where we are thrusting will change. And again, it's this spot right here. Down here at the bottom, it'll show you your delta of your vector. This is so our vector, our amount of thrust we're applying right now. We're applying a thrust of 3 in direction B, 2 in direction C, and 4 in the positive direction. So our vector next turn after movement will be 8 in direction B, 1 in direction A, and 4 up. So we're going to skip ahead to that and see what it looks like. And we're back from the time skip. As you can see, our ship has moved. So we're going to drag it over here, rotate it a bit. Because now you can see we have a pretty big vector. Now our vector is 8B, 8 in direction B. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. 1 in A and 4 up. Oops, reset the camera there. Okay, so you can see we switched to the white tile mode. You can see the 4 up more clearly. And so that's pretty much it. Mode 2 movement is actually fairly simple to describe, unlike Mode 0, which has the special effect of being able to thrust and fly backwards, or Mode 1, where you're constantly losing your speed as you pivot. Mode 2 is very straightforward. You just pivot and thrust, and you add to your vector. Now, so even though it's simple in terms of mechanics, actually flying in Mode 2 is a bit complicated simply because there is a lot to think about while you're trying to maneuver in three-dimensional space using Newtonian physics, and having to apply thrust so that your vector changes. So it does take a little bit of practice. So that's basically all I have for today. If you like this video, please give it a thumbs up. If you want to see more videos like this, please subscribe to the channel. And as always, comments are welcome down below. Have a nice day. Catch you later.